Welcome to the Gentleman Project podcast. Today, I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Cory Moore. Today in the studio, we have Tyler Dabo. Tyler's been a good friend of mine for a long time, ever since he was running and was the publisher of Utah Business Magazine. Today, he has a fund or funds, correct? Tyler, tell us a little bit about what you're doing today, and then we'll jump into family.
After leaving Utah Business Magazine in 2014, I started a small content marketing agency, and I built a domain, a company called injury.com. I sold that in 2017. About 6 months ago, my contract earnout was complete with them, and I joined Build Capital Partners as one of their partners. And we are kind of a non-traditional venture capital group where instead of building a fund, we have direct investments. We have active investments that we've founded, in addition to investments that we've placed. We have a company called Pure Healthcare, and that's probably, our shining star, if you will. It's taking up a lot of our time, deservedly so.
Cool. It sounds like a diverse background. Probably learned a lot because you've probably changed lifestyle quite a bit between these different ventures that you've had and how your family interacts with you because of free time and schedules and things like that. So I'd love to delve into that a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about your family, who your kids are, and your spouse.
My wife and I, we've been married for it will be 20 years this upcoming year. She's from St. George. We met while I was going to school down at Dixie College at the time. We have 4 children. Our oldest is a senior. She's 18. She just turned 18 at Bingham High School. My second boy, or my second child, first boy, is 15. He's a sophomore at Bingham as well. And then I have a 13-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl. So with activities, with raising these young ones, it's a fun time of life for sure.
Yeah.
But you ask a really interesting question, like when I was at Utah Business Magazine, I've been so blessed to have work-related jobs or even responsibilities that have allowed me to have time with my children. I've been blessed to have had the opportunity to pull away from work or to leave early or to go to games or to spend time with my kids. And I think I've gravitated towards those, almost not gravitated, but sought out those types of opportunities that have allowed me to have time. Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we kind of let things happen to us. And when it comes to our professional lives, when opportunities present themselves, the first question is not, how does this impact my family? The first question is, how much does it pay? Right. And what are the opportunities for advancement, and who do I get to network with? And to be mindful of, how does this impact my family when I take this new job? What's my quality of life look like? And is it going to end up controlling me instead of me controlling it? Because if you're not careful, especially in an entrepreneurial space or a venture capital space, especially, those things can kind of roll up pretty quickly and dominate your life from every aspect if you're not careful. So
yeah, 100%. And as an entrepreneur, I think that's also why I've always been a builder, right? Because it's allowed me the opportunity to be flexible, to be present where I need to be present, to work from wherever, whenever. Yeah, there hasn't been a shortage of work, but I also say there hasn't been a shortage of time with my family. If that's been trips, or if it's been traveling with my daughter one-on-one, taking a weekend, going on a Friday and a Saturday down to St. George for a tennis tournament. And so I think those things have always really not attracted me to the lifestyle, but have been I would say a byproduct of running your own business.
We had a guest, I think it was Derek Porter, who talked about times and seasons, in that, sometimes you need to be all in on what you're doing at work, and sometimes you need to be all in on what you're doing at home. And the entrepreneurial lifestyle does allow for a little more times and seasons, right?
Totally.
Sometimes you're a coach for the kids, sometimes you're starting a new business. And so I think giving ourselves a little bit of a break on if you can arrange times and seasons, great. Or if it's more your style to every weekend I'm at home and every week I'm at work, whatever. I just feel like finding the balance is probably important.
Yeah. And I think my kids, I want them to see me work. They need to see me put in the time and the effort. And so there are times, there are balances where it's like, hey, this is going to be a later night, or they see me on a travel on a weekend or even on a trip, right? Like it doesn't just end, with me being gone, work doesn't stop, right? It's right. As an entrepreneur, it's 24/7. And so being able for them to see me in those situations as well, I think is also super important.
I want to ask you something that we talked about before we started the podcast. You talked about you and your wife's relationship being kind of a foundational type of thing. And I think that's really important and something we haven't talked near enough about probably on the podcast. So maybe if you dive in for us, your thoughts on marriage and how that affects family and how that is, as you said, it kind of a foundational idea.
Well, I think about the Gentleman Project, right? And I think about what it means to be a father, and the things that we're trying to instill as fathers. I really believe it starts with the relationship with your spouse. And my father is one of the most kind, patient, loving person. He's been a great example to me of what it means to be a husband and the way he's treated my mother. I never saw them fight ever. For the 18 years I was in the home, and even to this day, my dad is he's not a pushover. He is just a patient person. My mom is a little bit more high strung and emotional, but my dad, through all of it, has just been so just a stalwart husband. And there's a lot of qualities my father has that I want to emulate and have tried to emulate. But one that I would say that I've tried the most is to cherish and to love my spouse, my wife, right? And I really believe that children observe those things. I did. We all do. We observed the relationship that our parents had. And I'm not doing it for those specific reasons, but I do know that they're observing me on how I treat her, how I respect her, how I show affection. I want my children know that I love their mother, and I show it. I mean, we're not overly flirtatious, this public display of affection, but there are times, and they're like, "Oh, Daddy, that's so gross," It's like, but over the years, coming up on, it's crazy to think that we've almost been married for 20 years. I can honestly say that our relationship today is better than it's ever been. And I don't think there's a lot of people that feel that way. I mean, obviously, right? We know the divorce rates, we know that people struggle and people struggle that you don't even know. You're like, what? They're getting a divorce, or what? They're having issues, or they're separated. And I just believe that's where it starts, right? It starts with the relationship with your spouse and showing that respect. You talk about a gentleman, right? And I know we'll get into this more, but I think that is, the peak of it all, if you will.
So you mentioned a couple of things. You say that you should cherish that relationship, and that can tell a lot of things. That you show affection. I've found very helpful to know my wife's love language.
Yeah.
My love language is affection. My wife's love language is service. I can hug her in the kitchen and everything, but if I go help her make dinner,
totally,
and I give her a hug in the kitchen, then we're both happy.
Yeah,
right.
Totally, yeah.
And my 10-year-old sits there and says, "Oh, Dad, that's gross. Every time you help Mom cook dinner, you give her a hug in the kitchen," right? But knowing that love language is important.
Yeah, and that comes with time and experience, right?
And communication, like sometimes all you need to do is ask. It's not a treasure hunt.
No, and they'll give a lot of clues, right? But you're right. I think it is communication. And I think, I know this is not really a marriage podcast, but I believe that, husband and wife being the center of the family, we have a responsibility as fathers. We as fathers need to lead, and our children need to see a father figure lead. And I think so often I've seen, I'm sure you guys have seen this too, where the father kind of takes a backseat role in the family and lets women are powerful people. They're incredible. Naturally, they are leaders. Naturally, they want to serve and they want to help their children grow. But we as fathers can't just delegate that. I believe that a lot of the issues that we see in families and in children are because fathers are not stepping up where they need to step up and instead of taking a passive, more reluctant or, just kind of going through the motions or, oh, what are we doing today? Honey, or where are we going? What's on the calendar? And it's not so much that, because admittedly, my wife does a great job of keeping things organized in the Dabo household.
Yeah, I'm really good at that too.
But
following,
right? But I think there are certain things, customs and traditions and routines that fathers can really be a leader, and I think it's important for the children, both boys and girls, to see that.
So, like, down to brass tacks here, there's going to be a lot of people listening that might be divorced, separated, widowed, that doesn't necessarily apply to. But if you're listening to the podcast and it does apply, imagine the strength and the power that your wife brings to the marriage. And then instead of that being enough, if I'm understanding you correctly, adding to that the power of a father who leads with the mother.
Yeah. And
the leg up that gives your kids in their development and the habits that they develop before they leave the house, right? That's a powerful position for a kid, a lucky position for a kid in a lot of circumstances to be in, to have that. So if that fits you, if it doesn't fit you, you've got to be purposeful. You have no choice.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of goes back to the lessons that like Rob Schallenberger taught us on the podcast. You can either lead a design life or a default life. A life by design will give you the result that you manifest.
I love that.
And
That's awesome.
And if you don't, so I used that a lot after I met Rob. Like I would ask, how are you parenting by design? What are some of the things that you've designed in your household? So do you have some of those things that you've designed in your household where you say, this is where I was at one point and I have stepped up and I have become more purposeful. And by design, this is what I do to lead?
100%. Yeah. I would say that, it starts again with communication with your spouse. You want to be on the same page of how you parent. You want to be able to collaborate together and really come up so that it's not just, oh, shoot, we need to address this. It's some stuff that's already been discussed. It's by design, right? For us, there's a few things that are really critical to us. Our kids, we want to participate in an extracurricular activity. We don't care what it is. We have some biases. My boys love baseball, and I don't think that's a surprise.
Or a coincidence.
Yeah, or a coincidence. One of them plays year-round baseball. The other one, like me, I would have been bored by just playing baseball year-round, and so he plays baseball and basketball and football. My oldest daughter plays tennis. She's just finished her senior year, and my youngest dances. So, we kind of have it all, but for us, that structure, that, an activity that sports provides, and we can, really dive into that too, but that's really important to us. The education comes first, but we participate in sports. That's the Dabos. It's important for us, the lessons that are learned there. early on in our marriage, we talked about video games, and we don't have video games in our home. We've seen so many times where, boys specifically, more so than girls, are addicted to video games. And I remember with some of our youth in our neighborhood, I had a conversation with them about this. And I asked them, I was like, how often do you think, how many hours a week do you think, or a day, are you playing video games, with each other? And it got up to about, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours a day. You multiply that, and then on weekends, it could be even more than that, right? On Saturdays, they're spending 6 hours, and their parents were coming to me saying, you need to help. You need to do something about this. And I made a comment that kind of offended some of the boys. I told them they were getting dumber by playing video games. And that's not all true, but on the flip side, the girls were having issues with some of the social media things, right? And so for us as a household, we decided no video games. They can go into their friend's house and they can play, but in our home, that's not going to happen. And then for us, digital devices was a huge thing. I remember a funny story. My daughter, who's a sophomore at Bingham, she goes to her first day of school, and she doesn't have her phone. She doesn't have a phone, and she doesn't have her schedule. Well, she has her schedule, but she doesn't really know where she's going. And she gets into the classroom runs into a teacher and says, well, where's your phone? We'll just pull it up for you. She's like, I don't have a phone. And I remember the first assignment in her class, the teacher says, everyone pull out your phones. So we're going to pull up this, to get onto to log into one of the apps to do their assignments. And she raised her hand and she says, I don't have a phone. And the teacher looks at her and she's like, well, let's go find like a laptop where you can go in and log in. And it was unique. She was the only one I would imagine in school that didn't have a phone. And for us, it wasn't a matter of yes, it was protection, but it was also, for us, it was in the right time. Because she did get a phone. She ultimately, when she did turn 16, she got a phone. And now we've kind of relegated that to when you're a sophomore, because as they're in high school, it's tough, right? They've got all these activities. But so our family, when it comes to digital devices, phones, they do not have them until they're sophomore or when they turn 16. And and when they do, we don't give them social media. They're not on social media. And when we do give them a phone, there's a contract. I don't know if you guys remember Colin Karchner, who was a local guy that would talk a lot about social media and cell phones, and who passed away about a little over a year ago. And he validated what we were telling our kids. And so he was big into no social media and no phones. It was great for our kids to hear that we weren't the only ones. We weren't the only mean parents that didn't give, everyone else has a phone at 10 or even below that. But for protection, as far as our boys go, and then our girls, when it comes to their image and their self-worth, being disciplined as parents to not allow that. At the time, our kids did not like us, but they're mature enough now to realize what our intent was. And even my daughter at 18, she has a phone, but she doesn't have social media. And there'll be a time where she does, but those are really critical things. If we look at when it comes to the contract that we put together for them.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, we have a communication, like, this is your phone. We're going to teach you how to use it. Colin Karchner would talk about, it's almost like you're handing over a gun to your daughter, or you're handing over pornography to your, not really handing, but by giving a boy a phone and access to the internet, it can be really easy for them to search those things. And so we talked about text etiquette. We talked about social media and the dangers of social media, cyberbullying, bullying at school or texting. And sometimes it's in fun, but on the recipient's end, it might not be that way. We touched on pornography, the dangers of that. I mean, I had a conversation with my son the other day, as he's a sophomore, almost 16, and has a phone now. And he was just starting to search some things that I could tell could lead into, and it was important as a father, like, hey, we have access to this. He knows that I do. He knows they turn in their phones at night. But having those really important, delicate, conversations, are important. And I know can be just, destructive, for his future and relationships. We talk about, even stuff like identity theft, right? When you're handing over the phone and being careful on what, where you're putting your name and how people can follow you, predators online, the length of time they're using. So when they turn in their phones, we on a weekly basis, we'll look at their activity and to ensure that, it's more intentional. It's not an activity to, kind of an entertainment thing, or when they're bored. Because so often, right, when we're bored, you see it with adults, right? We're in line at a grocery store or whatever. Someone's on their phone. There's no downtime. But for kids, when there's downtime, what are they doing, with the phone? And so as adults, we have to understand that they're observing us. So we can't have a double standard to that. But for our kids and teaching them the importance and the positive of the phone too. There's so much good, but helping them recognize the dangers of that. And they would come up, and my kids have come up with a lot of the consequences when things are not followed in that contract too. So anyways, those are a few things that I think are super important, or routines for us.
Yeah. I like the gun and hunting analogy versus your phone analogy, right? Like, you don't just give a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old a gun and say, and go hunt.
Yeah.
Ready, set, go. See ya. Figure it out. Right. And a phone could potentially be even more dangerous than the gun and go hunting kind of a thing. So I love that idea. And I think I did my best, but I wasn't as purposeful as what you're talking about. Like, when I turned it over, it would have been nice to have a little task, like a checklist. Let's go through these things for the parents that are listening that haven't got there yet. Might not be a bad idea to write down what are the risks of the phone and what are the positives of the phone. And when they give the phone, make it a thing. Like,
it's interesting.
Explain it to the kids. Kids are smart. They'll figure it. They'll listen. They'll get it.
Yeah. What's interesting is my wife had this great idea that I've unfortunately have not followed through. Because when a wife has an idea, you're like, you want to be supportive, right? And she had this idea, and I'm happy to share it here on the podcast, but of creating an app that is a certification before using the phone. I mean, every parent would want that, right?
That's a great idea.
And going through, like you said, a list of things that can teach, that can educate, but also that they can get their commitment when they use it, And I think, so it's still an idea, but I need to help her have that, come to fruition.
So we're kind of on the edge of this too with our oldest. We have some Gab phones in the middle that just text and call for our boys in junior high. Our oldest has a smartphone, but we've also kind of taken the stance that, like, you don't need social media at this point. And we've had those discussions over the course of the last couple of years. And my wife has kind of brought me, I've been kind of staunch about, like, no, like, absolutely not. And my wife has kind of brought me back to the table to discuss it a little bit, because I realize I've got about a year and a half left with my daughter at home. And
scary, right?
It is. It's very scary. And I feel like the clock is ticking about how to teach her the proper use of it while I still have influence in her life. And my wife has made it important for us to discuss this and to teach her, so that we don't just say, okay, now you're responsible for the phone bill and have fun. You can download whatever you want. So under supervision, having some exposure to some of these apps that can be detrimental within reason, right? Like my daughter doesn't want Instagram, but she wants to be able to communicate with her friends on Snapchat. And I've been a no Snapchat guy. No, absolutely not. But that literally is the way that kids communicate. They send each other forehead selfies. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. But that's the way that these kids communicate and how they kind of plug in socially now. So we're doing that, but we have okay, at any time you have to open up your Snap and show me everything that's in there. Yeah. Right. And if there's something in there just inappropriate, we're going to talk about it. And there's going to be a teaching moment happen here. So I think that there's a fine line, and I think every family is different and every kid's different. Sure. To be able to say, what's going to be best for my family. And the route that you've taken sounds like it's worked for your family.
Well, so far. Yeah. We have been, labeled as really strict parents. And, I think my daughter, my oldest, has said, I think you're the strictest parents that I know. And
you wear like a badge of honor or what?
I don't know. My parents were, we're strict, but we're also really open. Like we allow them to, to do a lot of things, right? They have tons of friends, and they're out with their friends. We do have a curfew, and I grew up without a curfew. My parents were like, we trust you. I did not do that. I was like, there's no way. I knew the things that I was running around having fun. But I think this, when it comes to discipline and being hard on your kids, think about the opposite of that. Think about not caring where your kids are. Think about not caring if they, do certain things on social media, or being somewhat absent. It's like the complete opposite, right? I believe that showing discipline and having rules show that you care. Like totally more so than the opposite, right?
As long as the kid knows that your rules come from a place of love.
Totally. Yeah. Right? You're exactly right. It's not to dominate or to control, but I think,
I think is a default for a kid to think like, oh, I just can't do this because my dad doesn't want me to, because he wants to control me.
And I think that's like family council time, right? To talk about why we do certain things and why we have certain rules. But again, kids thrive off of that. Like in those environments, right, where there is structure, routines, rules, they thrive, and I think they need that, right?
Well, I like to use the analogy of sports. You couldn't have any sport without some guidelines and rules. Otherwise you wouldn't know if you're winning or losing, right? You kind of have to have the boundaries, and then play hard, right? Inside those boundaries, do whatever you want. That's kind of what you're describing. And I know sports has been a huge thing for your family. You growing up, and you and I have talked, you've had big time mentors who still influence your life today. And then you've got your kids in sports. So talk to us a little bit about your sports history, what your kids are doing in sports, and why is sports important to the Dabo family?
Yeah. Growing up, I grew up in Monterey Bay. I grew up in Hollister, California. And my older brother was a big baseball fan. He loved the Yankees. And I believe because of my brother, I liked baseball, and I wanted to be, the next Will Clark. I was a big San Francisco Giants fan. And, but because of him, he pulled me in all the time. Tyler, let's go play catch. Tyler, let's go hit. Tyler, let's go do this. And, because of my brother, And then my younger brother and my younger sister, we all followed. My brother was a big water polo. He ended up playing water polo at BYU before they dropped the program. My younger sister played volleyball and softball for BYU. I kind of took a different route. I went to Dixie first and played football on a football scholarship, and then walked on the baseball team. And then after a 2-year mission, came back and redshirted in football and just played baseball. And then I got to BYU like my siblings did. But 2 years there, I had coaches. I had a coach. His name is Mike Carpel, who at the time, some of the things that he would have us do as pitchers, we were thinking like, what are we doing? We would have weekly mental skills where he'd go through the process of visioning and preparation mentally, in addition to the stuff that we were doing on the field and in the weight room. But he brought this mental side of it to prepare us for situations when we would come out and pitch. And I was a closer, so I'd come in at the end of the game, and he would talk about being, getting big before going out on the mound, and the confidence and all the preparation. He would call putting the hay in the barn, and all the effort so that when you get out on the field, that you could pull from all of that reservoir of, experience and hard work. He talked about, the process, working the process, putting in the hard work, and getting better every day. And so from that experience at BYU, I learned that in life too, that number one, we could accomplish anything. I could do whatever I want. There's potential in me to be not only a really, a great athlete, but as I took it in the business, that I wanted to work harder than everyone else, right? Like this idea that I was competing with people on my team for a spot, for playing time. And then also that I was competing against the opposing team. And I remember being late at night at the gym or early morning, we would swim a couple of times a week, to exercise our shoulder and get it in shape. And I remember being at like 5 o'clock in the morning thinking, is anyone else up right now working as hard as I am? And the amount of goals that he would put and the reflection of the self-awareness around, hey, I pitched today. How did I feel about this? Did I have confidence in every pitch that I threw? What were the actual results? And we would go through this exercise every time I'd pitch, and we would set goals on the next time. And so for me, goal setting and self-awareness and growth and progress and taking steps forward every day, I attribute to Coach Carpel and this thought process that I have today. And I instill that with my children. My daughter, who's been playing tennis since she was really young, we'd have those same conversations. Tennis was really hard for me. Cory, you and I had talked about this.
It's brutal when you're watching your kids. It's not like team sport where the team kind of wins or loses. It's just on your kid.
Well, not only that, but as a coach for baseball for my boys, I can coach.
Right. You can't coach during a tennis match.
Oh my! You can't
it's
say
brutal.
You can't say a word. Sometimes you try to get some sign language or like, but no. Tennis. What's great about tennis is all the preparation happens before. You let them play, and then you evaluate afterwards. It's so hard though, because during the match you see things as a parent. You've gone to all their lessons, you've seen them play, and if only you could say something, but you can't. So I think tennis is a great example of being able to evaluate your performance following the match, setting goals, working on specific elements of your game. And man, I just have loved tennis. I'm not a tennis player myself, but I've come to really love the game. And my daughter, traveling with her, there's times where we go as a family, but there's times where it's one-on-one. and the one-on-one time to be able to sit down and, I'm sure my daughter rolls her eyes a lot after, here we go, what's dad going to say? But I think there's some questions that you ask to help them understand so that, they make progress. And my daughter is mature beyond her years, and she's just a great young woman, but she gets it. I think she gets it beyond what tennis has provided to her on the court. And I think she's been able to really see the vision of what that is in her life, and how that's shaped her and molded her to become the person that she is today. And so for us, competing, learning to lose. I remember my daughter had a match that she lost when she was like 12, and she got beat pretty good. I mean, she thought she was pretty good, but then she came up against one of these girls that just whooped her. And I don't even know if she, scored a game on her or anything. And I wasn't concerned, but I was wondering how she would react to it. And I remember when she came home and her attitude completely changed. And she knew like the gap that there was between her game and that girl's game. And she recognized that it was going to require a higher level of dedication if she wanted to perform like that. And so from that time, I never had to encourage her. She was self-motivated. She worked her tail off. There wasn't a day that went by that she didn't work on something. And I think it inspired her. So learning to lose, like the humility that it requires, like sports happens, right? It humbles the best of us. Cory, you and I like to golf. Golf is one of those things too. It can humble you in a heartbeat. So sports for us, there's just so many facets of it, helping create men, boys to men and girls to women. To me, sports is a great tool for that.
Tyler, sports probably gives you an opportunity then in that example specifically of her looking at that other girl who is better than her to say, this is your potential and even more than that. So talk to us about how you have helped your children realize their potential. That's
an awesome question. And I think as human beings, we are very complex people. We're complex beings and so different than anything else, right? We are self-aware. We can learn from our past mistakes, and not only our own individual mistakes, but we can learn from others. And I think as a father, one of the most critical roles that I have is helping my children understand who they are. As a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there is a core belief that we are children of God and that He loves us, that He understands who we are, that He created us. He wants us to be happy. Like there's some, understanding that as a child is sometimes it's kind of hard to comprehend. With that understanding of who we are, it really helps us and can help us understand of who we can become. And that in that becoming is to your question of our potential of who they are today is not who they will be. I have a son, Alex, who's 13, and my children and my wife and I could describe Alex to a T. Alex is an incredible young man. He's got so many gifts and talents, and he's passionate, right? We could describe him of who he is right now. But I think what's important for him to realize is that he's just starting, right? And that his potential of really this of becoming, right? Of who he's becoming, that there's more to what he's already realized. And I think those two things of understanding who we are and understanding our potential or this becoming is to me two like super, super important principles that I think my children we're trying to help them understand, you know?
Yeah, I think there's an importance in explaining to our kids that they can become whoever they want and to decide now what that looks like. Mm-hmm. Right. I believe during my life, I knew I was going to do certain things, but I'm not sure it was until probably later in my teens, early 20s, where I kind of sat down and went, but who do I want to be? Right now, what do I want to do? That's a little bit different. Who do I want to become? What strengths do I want to have? What principles do I want to lead? Right. And you can do that by default or you can do it by design. So explaining to them that they have potential, explain to them that they can do anything they want to do. They can become whoever they want to be. And then to walk towards that goal, right? To have a vision. Yeah. Because you can either walk in whatever direction the wind blows you, or you can decide what mountain you want to climb. And I think explaining that to our kids, like you're saying, is kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Like who could you become if you reached your full potential? If you were to reach your full potential, what does that look like? You know, and opening that window of vision for them to say that anything's possible. And I think, you know, on another note, last night I was with Rudy Rudiger from the movie Rudy. And I've had an opportunity to interact with him on a variety of occasions. And, you know, his story just kind of resonates as we're talking about this, right? This fight for something beyond where he was, this vision of what he wanted. And I think that story of Rudy resonates with so many of us. We all resonate with it, right? Hey, if we want something, it's not just going to happen. We have to work. And if we put forth the work, persevere, fight vigorously, like we can achieve that. I mean, I think that's probably a curriculum that all of our children should watch, right? Is watching Rudy. And I think, you know, our generation, we grew up with it. You know, when we were in high school, we saw that movie. But I think some of our children still need to see that, right? And learn from it and be inspired by it. He mentioned last night that Kobe Bryant was in a shoot around. His daughter was about to sing the national anthem at the Lakers game. And he was there with his son and his daughter in pregame watching Kobe shoot. And Kobe was doing his little routine going around the key and around the 3-point line. And he sees Rudy. He had not met him before. He's like, is that Rudy? Is that the real Rudy? And sure enough, he's like, yeah, you know. Kobe comes over to him and tears in his eyes and says that he tells his son that he was his hero and that he's like, I am who I am today because of you, Rudy. And you think about Kobe, all this talent and all this, you know, skill. But what did Kobe have that was different? He had this work ethic and this fight to be the best. And that was pretty special to hear that from Rudy, that experience. So
Rudy actually came and spoke to us at one of our Gentleman Project events. We should probably get him on the podcast.
Yeah, why hasn't he been on the podcast yet?
We'll work on it.
There you go.
Between Tyler and Randy, we can get it done.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So Tyler, as we wrap up the podcast, we always ask each of our guests what they think it means to be a gentleman.
I think it starts with the respect and love that we show our spouse. It starts with how we treat the opposite sex. I think about a gentleman. That's what comes to mind initially, is how we treat women. And above all women, as gentlemen, is how we treat our spouse. And that love, the respect, that cherish. You know, I think about that word cherish. You know, it's like a, you know, it's not a prize. We don't have a prize, but it's something super special to us. And if I could influence at all those that may be listening to this, I think that's where it starts. And I think our children, the way that, what it means to be a gentleman is their observation of how we treat their mother.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. I love it.
Tyler, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us.
You bet. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
I've seen a lot of the, I've listened to a lot of the podcasts, and so it's an honor to be here. And I know quite a few of the people that you've had on, and I feel honored to be a part of it as well.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you all for listening to the podcast today, spending time, and hopefully it provides value to you. Please don't hesitate to share it with somebody that you love. If somebody's name came to your mind while you were listening to the podcast, share the link to the podcast with them. You can never go wrong by following a good impression. If that happened to you during the podcast today, please share the podcast, like it, share it, and head on over and subscribe so that you can get these each Monday that we release them. Tyler Dabo, thanks for joining us today. I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Cory Moore. Everybody, be and raise ladies and gentlemen.